Hi, Professor Kimberly Miller. My name is Mary Murphy, and this is the four phases of the philosophy of education that I have picked. So, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was the first one that I picked from our reading this week. This one was actually signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson. President Kennedy did propose this, but he was killed before he could ever see this go into law. Um, Public schools were now integrated everywhere to include everyone, and that means potential populations could now go to school with everyone else. Everyone was entitled to the same education as any other kid. This is when integration started, and this was the first piece of legislation that started the rest of our civil rights segment laws throughout the years. The Bilingual Education Act of 1968. This was fairly interesting when I read about it this week in our textbook for our reading. In the early 20th century, immigration started happening here in America. People from Eastern and Southern Europe were coming over here to get away from the persecution that they were facing at home, and they came here to search for better lives for themselves. Public schools found out that there was a language barrier because not all of these kids spoke English. A lot of them spoke a different language, so we needed to find a way to bridge that gap. Schools now have to provide bilingual program services because of this law. We have a lot of students that are still immigrating here from different places like Mexico and other areas. So now we have to make sure that they can understand what's going on in the classroom. These children are given every tool to succeed now versus back then when they didn't have all that available to them. And now potential students are now given special services for success. And I'm very grateful that this law went into effect. Third one, Education for All Handicapped Children of 1975. This has probably became my favorite law so far. Um, this is when students with disabilities are provided the least restrictive environment to work in. Some of these children might have a disability. It might be moderate, it might be severe. But now we have special education teachers that actually work with these children, and they give them individualized attention in small group settings. So this is when the individualized education plan was introduced, or better known as IEP. This is one of the things I've been learning about in my year so far as being a substitute teacher. Um, Potential populations are now being taught in a classroom. These are kids that they might have a disability, but they're not sure what it is, or it wasn't fairly known what it was back then. So now we're able to discern what it is, and now we're able to get them in the right service programs to help them. They are not excluded from education anymore like they once were. Before this law came into effect, many of these children were denied an education because of their disability. So now this law helps these children to become more accepted into our society. And now for the last one, Improving America's Schools Act of 1994. This law has actually helped out our schools now more than I realized before. The government has put a spotlight on the learning gaps of our children, and we are now figuring out where they are having the most problems with. So now these kids are getting special attention, and they're also getting more help to increase their skills. This law has improved funding for bilingual and immigration education. So now they have more opportunities for better programs and for better tools for success. Our potential populations are now given special programs so that way they can get the help that they need for the school that will best meet their needs. It also gave schools resources to help with their education as well, better books, better resources, better computers. States can also now save money for school improvements. And this is true today because schools are always on a tight budget, and the state gives them money as long as the students show up for school. And President Bill Clinton signed this into law back in 1994. So now I want to talk about how potential students are being affected by these laws throughout American history. Each law has made things better for potential students. The laws gave them a right to learn when no one else believed in them, and now we can have a way to teach them and to help them make them better productive members of society. They get individual help with their learning. So now if there is a student that doesn't speak English very well, we can get someone in their home language to interpret for them in school. And now there's computers that allow them to give them programs for success. There are now communication programs so we can allow them to better communicate with us. Schools are being held accountable now for student learning. So this is where we team up with the parents so that way they're aware of what's going on in the classrooms, so that way their student can do well. Children are allowed to play and learn together. All children of every age, race, color, you name it, everyone now can have the ability to play and learn together. And each child is valued and seen as a person now. So now we're seeing what potential each child has and how we can better help them in the future. Now I want to discuss how these events have reshaped my thinking about teaching. So since I have learned about potential students, now I'm seeing every child as a special person. I want to give these children a future, and I want them to see the infinite possibilities that can come when they think about what they want to do as a career or what they want to do regarding their futures. I'm starting to see the potential that each child has. Each child is special in their own way. I just need them to see that. Each child can be a member of society in their own way with their own skills and their own personalities. When a child needs help in the classroom, I want to assist them however I can. I want them to know that they can ask me for help if they need it. A lot of students have gaps to fill, but I want to help to close that gap and to give them a chance to work hard for their future. Now, for the question, I had to revise it originally because when I wrote it in the discussion post this week, I didn't like what I put in there originally. So, this is my question for this presentation. In your opinion, has education for potential students gotten better or worse throughout history? So, think about since the start of American history, when the colonies first got established, how education started back then. Also, consider education laws now and before. Are things better or worse than they were before? I think things are better now for our potential students, but what do you think? Here are the references that I used for my presentation this week. I hope that you enjoyed my presentation, and I hope you have a great week. Thank you.